Hey there. Thanks again for joining me again. Now, the topic today I want to just specify up front is in no way a sales pitch, okay? I've never gotten software or hardware for free, none of that stuff, and I don't really like, I'm not going to do like product reviews and stuff like that. I think that just doesn't interest me. But the point of my channel is to share my journey as a composer as I learn these tools and offer some of the insights, whatever insights I can about how they're used, how I'm using them. And that's for two reasons. One is I do want to share what I know, but perhaps the bigger reason is that I want to connect with a community of other like minded people. So, people who are using modern technology, trying to get involved and build a sustainable life composing music. And Dorico Pro is probably one of the best things that I've added to my arsenal uh, in recent years. But it does come in a number of versions. And although in the subject I talk about Dorico Pro, one thing I do want to talk a little bit about is Dorico for iPad, because I use that actually a lot for my sketching. Okay, but let's first talk about who is Dorico Pro made for, in my opinion. In my opinion, Dorico Pro is literally made for professionals. And the reason I say that is that a lot of the differences between, say, the other versions or elements and Pro have to do with engraving. So you're printing parts for actual performers. That's just not something you do unless you're working professionally in this realm. If you're an orchestrator, an arranger, something like that, you're going to have Pro because the engraving and printing features are going to be so important. If you're a composer only and you're writing music, maybe doing production music, you produce all the music in your own studio. Engraving and things like that really don't matter too much to those folks. But there are things that I think still very useful for a pro. So, in essence, it really is made for professionals. It's going to support basically any creative idea, and it's going to allow you to really explore orchestration properly. It's going to allow you to actually do things like write divisi, for example, which you can't do in the lower versions. So it really is a pro package. Now, what are some of my favorite features? Probably my very favorite feature is the custom playing techniques. And I've actually demoed this a lot in my previous videos because essentially a playing technique is a way to have something I write in my score trigger something in my virtual instrument. Now, the most traditional form of this is like a key switch, something like I write pizzicato in my score and it switches the key switch to the pizzicato sample. That's the most traditional basic form of it, right? But because I can set up custom ones, I can use, say, phrase-based engines like NI's Session Guitarist or Action Strings or Damage. Maybe there are rhythmic phrases or piano phrases, something like Easy Keys. And I want to trigger phrases within my score for playback. You need to have custom playing techniques in order to do that. And I do that a lot. I love seeing how I can integrate those instruments. So if that at all appeals to you or you work a lot with those instruments, then I think you need to have custom playing techniques. That is my favorite. That's my favorite feature of Dorico Pro. The next favorite that I have is notes to and from chord symbols. So I come from kind of like a more like a pop rock background. I'm a guitar player. And so I think in terms of chord names, D minor, B flat major. I see B flat and I know, oh, B flat, D, and F. But when I'm looking at a staff, I don't come from sort of a more traditional background, so I still have to really identify, oh, there's a B flat, a D, and an F. That's a B flat major chord. But if I see B flat written as a chord symbol, I know right away what that is. And that's just because my background has built that fluency for me, right? If you come from maybe a more sort of like conservatory based background, maybe this wouldn't matter as much. But for me, it's really nice. I actually write out the chords above my staff. I write my whole piece, and then oftentimes I'll delete the chord symbols. But I've used them throughout the compositional process. Dorico Pro has a feature where you can either have it generate parts for you, which basically comes down to creating realistic and the right kind of voicings for that chord. For example, the cello would get a bass note, the viola would get, the inner voice is the third, and the violin would get the soprano. It knows that, so it doesn't just make dumb roots everywhere. It actually knows, oh, the bassoon's going to get this note. This is how notes would translate out over a four-horn section. It's pretty smart, and I can write a chord diagram and immediately lay out, 16, 32 bars, however many, of, maybe whole notes. So it's not a substitute for writing, of course, but it can distribute a bunch of stuff out over my score and give me a starting point very quickly, which I love. Now, it also has a feature that I do use where you can actually create a rhythmic figure or like some kind of rhythmic motif, and then you can say, I want to write out, all of give me a scaffolding, a skeleton crew, if you will, of notes, but follow this particular rhythmic motif, and then it will, so if I have like, a dotted quarter to an eighth followed by a half, and that's my 4/4 measure, and I want that rhythmic pattern to be repeated, but I want it to be, the third in the viola and the soprano voice in the violin and the root in the bass and cello. It'll do that, and I can say, use this rhythmic figure. Boom, it's written it all out. So again, it's not a substitute for writing. I think it would be a mistake to think of it that way. What it is a great tool for is it's like copy and paste. It's just a huge time saver. Copy and paste is not plagiarism. Doesn't make a creative writer less creative inherently, but it does save a huge amount of time. So I love that. That's my next feature. Divisi is a feature you're only going to get with Dorico Pro, and I think that is a really great feature. It inspires me to write music the way orchestral music was intended to be written, and it allows me, to follow in the footsteps of other great composers. So I love that. Let's talk about some sort of second-class favorites, things that I like, but maybe wouldn't convince me to go full pro. It does come with Halion Symphonic Orchestra. I don't really think that's a very good library. If you got no libraries, it's good. Now with 5.1, the two paid versions come with Elements and Pro. They come with Iconica Sketch, which I personally think is actually a really great sketching library. It's not going to get you to a full mock-up at all. Neither will Halion Symphonic Orchestra. But they're really good for sketching, and I love using them for that purpose. And those libraries come with the paid versions. They come with Pro as well, but they do come with Elements. So I don't think maybe Halion Symphonic Orchestra comes, but Iconica Sketch comes, I think, with Elements. And I think it's better than HSO. Condensing, exploding, reducing, and paste into voice are some features that I use sometimes. Condensing a score, maybe 4 horn parts into 2 staves. Using the vertical split, which I've used before in some of my demo videos. Condensing, I'll have my condensed view on the top and my non-condensed view on the bottom. I don't really put together a lot of conductor scores, so I'm not too concerned about condensing for that purpose. But sometimes for assignments, I might have to do that. Sometimes for material I'll give my students, I need to do that. And it's a nice feature. It's nice to have. Exploding and reducing is also a nice feature if you played a piano part and you wanted to explode it out to a string section. Nice to have. It probably isn't going to make me buy Dorico Pro, but it's nice to have. Extended filtering. I do use filtering actually a fair amount. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite features, but filtering basically allows me to say, okay, I've got this page with, I don't know, 14 different orchestral instruments, right? I got my strings and my percussion and my horn and my winds, and I just want to work on the winds right now. So I'll use a filter, and then now I'm just looking at the winds. I still hear all the other instruments when I play back, but my eyeballs are just on the winds or just the trumpets, something like that. It's nice. Filtering is nice, and there's more filtering capabilities in Dorico Pro. Extensive guitar tab, that is another thing that you can do. Now, I do have guitar students. Writing guitar tabs kind of nice, especially if I have other repertoire or music literature that I want to give to a guitar student, especially a classical guitar student. It's nice to be able to just like put that in guitar tab very quickly. It's just kind of a, second class feature I like. I like to have. I like knowing it's there. It's useful, but it's not why I bought Dorico at all. Let's talk about what are some of its other professional features. Even though these are ones that maybe aren't my favorites, I don't use them a lot. Very flexible page layouts. This goes back to kind of this topic of engraving and printing and having a lot of control over that. If you are writing music that's going to be performed by an orchestra, or you're working with arrangers and you have to be able to transfer individual parts and think about how they're written, designing them to be playable, then having page templates can accelerate that workflow. Having all these advanced capabilities with engraving and printing, super, super important, but I don't personally use that. Custom key signatures, note heads, things like that, those can be handy, but again, I don't need to write a lot of music. I never have to write actually music where I need to use specific note heads. It's nice to have sometimes just to remind me what I'm writing. There's also a lot of configurable details about like beaming. Do you want to beam 4/8 in a row with one beam, or do you want to have them in pairs so you can see the beats? Things like that. You got to do that if you're a pro. Absolutely got to do that. Do I have to do that when I'm producing music in my computer in my studio for production music? No, I don't have to worry about it. So these are nice features to have. I never. These are the things I never use. One final comment I'll make, so I can wrap things up before it gets crazy long, is that when it comes to importing and exporting, all the features are the same. I also want to talk about using Dorico for iPad, because Dorico for iPad is awesome, especially if you get if you use the subscription process, which I did. I think I bought the lifetime subscription. Then you get Iconica Sketch on your iPad, and it's great. I can go anywhere, and as a composer, I'm just trying to generate ideas, or I want to see, well, what are the different ways that I could harmonize this melody with a horn section? And I can just doodle with it. It saves over iCloud Drive. Then it's on my computer when I come back into the studio. I love that. So I might say that iPad's Dorico is very key to my workflow, and it doesn't come up enough. I think it's an awesome app. I think it's super useful. I'm so glad Dorico has that. Before I was using Notion by Presonus, which was good. I have friends who use StaffPad. I've not had so much luck with that. I'm sure it's great if you get the workflow down, but since I'm a Dorico guy now, Dorico iPad is awesome. So that's all I have to say. Please like and subscribe. All your support really, really helps me out, and it helps encourage me to keep producing more videos. If there are topics that you want to hear about, also please put them in the comments. I do respond to those, and many of my ideas have come directly from comments I've gotten from students. Thank you again so much. I hope you have a great weekend coming up making music, and I will see you again next week. Bye for now.